China is now offering an alternative to the LBMA for large-scale gold purchase and storage. An offer to store reserve assets in a way that can't be frozen. And that, of course, is why this is interesting. So China is positioning to become the custodian of foreign sovereign gold reserves. What they're doing here is inviting friendly nations to not only buy gold from the Shanghai Gold Exchange, but to store it inside China's borders. Now, what does any of that have to do with any of us? Well, this is one more factor to think about if you're asking whether this gold rally has staying power, because this would put the Shanghai Gold Exchange into direct competition with the London Bullion Market Association. And the LBMA is not a small player. They control more than 90% of global over-the-counter gold trade. And those trades are settled in US dollars. So China's competition here, it would be designed to pull away some of that control. So this could be a really big move. And it shouldn't really be a surprise because the People's Bank of China has been one of the biggest drivers of gold's rally. They've added more than 2,000 tons since 2020, and that includes 10 straight months of new purchases this year in 2025. So if you look at the charts, you see that steady buying has helped push gold to records above $3,790 an ounce. We're getting close to $3,800. Now, at the same time, China has been offloading U.S. treasuries. We've been talking about that recently. We'll go back a little bit further. They've been strengthening bilateral ties through the Belt and Road Initiative. If you remember what that is, it's infrastructure loans, energy deals, and financial partnerships across the global south. China is more than just a bank here. They are structuring deals that are advancing their own interests, pulling more nations under their umbrella. Now, this is a huge, far-reaching strategy, and gold has always just seemed like a subplot. But this new invitation from the Shanghai Gold Exchange makes it really clear that it's becoming more than that. Now, before we take that further, quick shout out to channel sponsor Summit Metals. If you're looking to buy gold or silver, they have you covered. And hey, if you're looking to sell, they have you covered there too. They'll take care of you on both sides of the sale. SummitMetals.com. Now back to the story. We've seen Xi, Putin, and Modi in the news, taking long strolls, holding hands. Sure, these are photo ops. Might look like they're just peacocking, but there's real momentum away from the dollar and into gold. That momentum got a huge push in 2022 when the US and Europe froze Russian reserves after the invasion of Ukraine. Now, you call that whatever you like, but it sent a very clear message on how wealth can be weaponized. India got a taste more recently. Their assets weren't frozen, but their continued imports of Russian oil put them on the business end of a new 50% tariff. Now, India is a U.S. strategic partner, so a 50% tariff definitely says something. That's not a friendly negotiation tactic. And India's response says something too. Rather than backing down, they doubled down on that trade agreement with Russia, and that's why we're seeing these press events. Now, the fact that these announcements all seem to include China is not an accident. When Modi takes photo walks with Putin and Xi, that sends a very specific message. Now, this all works into China's 2050 vision. I've seen that explained a few different ways, but the general idea is that China's working to restore its place as the world's leading superpower by 2049, which just happens to be their 100th anniversary for the People's Republic of China. Now, they play the long game, but they also jump on opportunities when they come along, and they move fast when they do because they don't have to worry about public opinion and they don't have to wait for legislative approval. When they decide to act, they act. So it doesn't matter if that's infrastructure, trade agreements, or gold. Those moves are all deliberate. They might seem small on their own, but they all work toward this plan that stretches across, decades. Now, I don't have the full playbook of China's plans for world dominance, so let's narrow in on what they're doing with gold. We see now that China is not just buying for itself. It's now offering to hold the gold of other nations, and that would turn the Shanghai Gold Exchange into more than just a domestic marketplace. It would be a platform for China to become this custodian for global reserves. And that's not just about storage. It would help the partner nations reduce their dependence on the dollar. Now think about what that means. Assets held in Shanghai cannot be frozen by Western institutions. Now look, I'm laying out plans here that are well above my pay grade. I'm just some guy with a YouTube channel, but I would bet there are governments out there that would call that a win. Not having to answer to Western institutions, that'd be a big deal. The catch here, though, is that it creates a new dependence where China holds the strings. So out from under the thumb of the United States, only to slide under the thumb of China. And a quick housekeeping note here. I chose these Chinese lunar coins for a reason, of course, but to be clear, they're actually Perth Mint lunars minted in Australia. And another note, I'm not trying to make this about politics. I'm not trying to make it about China versus the West. I think what we're looking at is just higher net demand for gold. You have central banks already buying over 1,000 tons a year. That's been happening since 2022. And if China is encouraging other countries to add gold to their reserves, store it in Shanghai, well, that's more demand. And speaking of demand, we've already been seeing central banks around the world stacking more gold than any other point in modern history. And I haven't even mentioned private investors and the net inflows to gold ETFs. So there's a lot happening. The supply is not growing fast enough to keep up with that demand. And that is why we've seen this continued run above $3,790 an ounce. And it's also why that price looks justified. Now, I'm not saying this invitation from the Shanghai Gold Exchange is going to spike the price tomorrow, but this is another example of a move that we probably would have never expected. Something that could push the price of gold higher, and something that definitely gives a picture of how important gold has become to this move away from the US dollar. So like I said earlier, I'm not here to talk politics. I'm just here to talk about the implications to all of us at the individual level. And that has a lot to do with price. Now, I mentioned my 2024 price prediction. It landed in the middle of a range that I'd given, but it got there in a way that I just wouldn't have expected back in 2023. Now, the surprise came from central bank gold purchases. That rally didn't wait for the US Fed policy shifts. It started strong straight out of the gate. Now, that's a good reminder that demand from the top drives price in a big way. Those central banks have been locking up about a third of annual gold production for 3 years running, and that pushes price higher for everybody, including us. So it's easy to think about gold as just being some kind of inflation hedge, but there is a lot more to this price rally than that. These bigger strategic moves being made at the national level, well, they aren't something that any of us can predict, and this is almost a case where we have to expect the unexpected. Gold price continuing to go up, it just shouldn't be a surprise to any of us anymore at this point. So let's call it good there. Let us know what you think about China trying to compete with the LBMA, whether you think that will work, and whether you think that's going to be one more thing pushing the price of gold higher. And while you're in the comments, be sure to hit that like button if you found any of this interesting. Be sure you're subscribed with notifications turned on if you want to hear more on the topic. And if you're still here, thanks again for watching. I always appreciate your time. Take care.